You ever get that weird gut feeling something's wrong, but you can't quite explain why? That was me, standing behind the grill in our backyard, flipping steaks like I'd done 100 times before. The smell of sizzling meat drifted through the warm evening air, mixing with the sweet scent of freshly cut grass. Laughter bubbled around me, friends chatting under soft string lights we'd hung over the patio, drinks clinking, easy smiles all around. On the surface, it was a perfect night. The kind of evening you'd want to bottle up and save. But deep down, something wasn't right. My name's Ryan Walker, and for years I took pride in throwing these little get-togethers. Good food, cold beer, decent music, and surrounded by people I liked. I've always believed that there's something special about backyard parties. Like for a few hours, you can forget the world and just enjoy the moment. But that night, something gnawed at the back of my mind. It was like an itch I couldn't reach, a quiet hum of dread buzzing just beneath the surface. I tried to brush it off, chalking it up to stress or maybe just a bad day. I glanced across the lawn and there she was, my wife, Emily. She stood under the glow of the garden lights, her wine glass cradled effortlessly in one hand. She was smiling at something someone had said, tilting her head just slightly in that graceful way that always made her look like she was posing for a photo. Beautiful. Almost too perfect. And that, right there, was the first red flag. Lately, there was a kind of distance between us I couldn't ignore. The way she spoke to me felt colder. Conversations that used to flow naturally now felt forced. Then there were the late nights. The vague excuses. And worst of all, the way she looked at me like I was something she had to tolerate, not someone she once loved. A week earlier, I'd woken up in the middle of the night and reached across the bed, only to find the space next to me empty. I rubbed my eyes and followed the dim light spilling from the hallway. That's when I heard her voice, quiet, urgent, and definitely not meant for me. When I stepped into the living room, Emily was on the couch, clutching her phone like it held her whole life. The second she noticed me, she jumped, actually flinched like a kid getting caught sneaking out. She stammered out something about a work call. Said it way too fast. Wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't press her in that moment, but I felt the shift. It was like a hairline crack in a glass window, barely visible, but you know if you tap it just right, the whole thing could shatter. Now, as I watched her from across the yard, that same uneasy feeling crept back in. Our eyes met. Just for a moment. And in that split second, I swear I saw something in her expression. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. But it was gone just as fast as it appeared. She turned away and leaned toward the man standing next to her. Derek Foster. Just hearing his name made something cold slither down my spine. Derek was the kind of guy who walked into a room and expected every head to turn. Always well-dressed, always laughing just a little too loud, always acting like the world was his stage. The guy had charm, sure, but the kind that felt slimy if you stood too close. The kind that made women blush and husbands suspicious. He thrived on being the center of attention. And in that moment, he had Emily's full attention. She laughed again, too loud, too eager, and leaned in just a bit too close. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. 1 second, she was laughing with Derek. The next, both of them had vanished. That was the moment my stomach turned to stone. I scanned the yard, hoping maybe she'd gone to grab more wine or check on something inside. But that voice in the back of my mind, the one that had been whispering to me all evening, started to shout. I turned and caught my best friend, Jason, watching me from the patio. Our eyes met, and without a word, he gave me a small nod toward the house. Like he already knew. And right then, I knew too. I didn't make a scene. I didn't even say a word to anyone. I just handed the tongs off to someone without looking, wiped my hands on my jeans, and headed for the house. My body moved on its own, slow, controlled, but fueled by something boiling under the surface. I walked past the guests, nodding here and there, pretending everything was normal. But my heart was thudding like a war drum in my chest. My instincts were screaming now, louder than ever. The moment I stepped inside, the noise from the party faded like someone had turned down the volume. The warm glow of the kitchen lights barely reached the darker hallway, and the deeper I went, the heavier the silence got. It wasn't just quiet, It was eerie, heavy, like the air itself knew what I was about to find. Then I heard it. A gasp. Soft, sharp, unmistakably hers. Emily's voice. I froze. My whole body went stiff, like I'd been hit with a jolt of electricity. I turned my head slowly toward the guest house, this little side room we'd renovated into a private nook a couple summers ago. It had its own entrance, tucked away behind some shrubs and ivy. We rarely used it. But tonight, the door was cracked open, and I heard another sound. A muffled moan. Low, breathy. That was it. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I walked straight toward the door like I was in a daze. My hand closed around the knob, and for a second, I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to see what I already knew. But the rest of me, the part that had been dying a slow death for weeks, needed to know. I pushed it open. And there they were. Emily was on top of him, straddling Derek Foster like he was her damn lifeline. Her fingers were tangled in his hair, his mouth all over her neck. Her dress was bunched around her waist, his hands gripping her thighs like he owned her. There wasn't any guessing left. No, maybe I misunderstood, or maybe it's not what it looks like. No. This was exactly what it looked like. My wife. In my house. Sleeps up with another man while our friends laughed outside and I grilled steaks like a clueless idiot. My breath came out slow, shaky. My whole world narrowed to that single moment. That image. It hit like a punch to the chest. Everything else blurred, the sound of the party, the smell of food, the buzz of conversation, it all disappeared. And then Derek had the nerve to lift his head and smirk. That smug, cocky smile like he was proud of himself. Like he knew exactly what he'd done and didn't give a damn. He locked eyes with me and didn't even flinch. That's when the pressure inside me turned from heartbreak to something sharper. Something darker. My fists clenched at my sides, every muscle in my body coiled like a spring. Emily, still breathless and wide-eyed, froze in place. Her face drained of color. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. Not with rage. Not even sadness anymore. Just disbelief. Disgust. And then Derek opened his damn mouth. "Well," he said, all smug and amused. "Looks like the party just got a little more interesting." I didn't reply. Didn't shout. Didn't punch him. I just stepped back, turned around, and walked away. But inside me, something had snapped. I stepped back out into the yard, but the warm night air suddenly felt suffocating. Like it was wrapping around my throat and daring me to breathe. The clinking of glasses, the hum of conversation, the music, none of it sounded the same anymore. It all felt far away, muffled behind a wall of rage and disbelief. I walked with purpose, keeping my face as neutral as I could. I didn't want to tip anyone off just yet. I wasn't ready to explode. Not here. Not in front of everyone. But something inside me had changed. Permanently. And then I saw him. Derek, the same guy I'd just found tangled up with my wife, casually strolled out from the house like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just ripped apart a marriage. His shirt was untucked, hair a little messy, Emily's doing, no doubt, but he had that same arrogant swagger he always carried. Like none of this could touch him. I expected him to keep his distance. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd feel a little shame. But no. He walked out like he owned the place. Like I was the intruder. Emily didn't come out. Probably still inside trying to clean up the mess, fix her hair, or maybe just cry in some corner and figure out how to explain away the unexplainable. But Derek. He was soaking in the spotlight, practically glowing with pride. And then he saw me. Our eyes locked, and I swear, for a split second, I saw something shift in his expression. Not fear exactly, but recognition. A flicker of awareness that whatever game he thought he was playing, it was over. He grinned. "Damn, Ryan," he said loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. "You look like you've seen a ghost." That's when the conversations around us started to trail off. One by one, heads turned in our direction. The tension in the air thickened, settling over the yard like the moments before a thunderstorm. People started to sense that something was happening. I took one slow step toward him. Controlled. But inside, I was a wildfire ready to tear through everything in my path. "Go ahead," I said, my voice low and even. "Say what you really want to say." He tilted his head, that infuriating smirk growing wider. He wanted this moment. He wanted the audience, the attention, the drama. Fine. I'd give him the stage. With a little laugh, he leaned in just enough that only I could hear him. "I was with your wife," he said, voice low and smug. "And trust me, she didn't hold back." I didn't hear anything after that. The rage in my head drowned out every sound. The past, the memories, the fake smiles, the lies, it all vanished. Derek thought I was going to lose it. That I'd swing first, start a fight, make a scene. What he didn't expect was the smile. I smiled at him. Slow, cold, controlled. "Hit me," I said quietly. He blinked, thrown off. "What?" "I want you to hit me," I repeated, stepping just a little closer. "Come on. Let's see what you've got." Now the crowd was really paying attention. People stopped talking. Some even pulled out their phones. I saw the little red lights. Someone was already recording. Derek saw it too. He couldn't back down now. Not in front of all these people. Not with his ego on the line. So he did it. He swung. But it wasn't a punch. It was a weak, half-assed slap. The kind of move someone throws out when they don't really know how to fight but want to act like they do. And that's when everything changed. The slap landed, but honestly, it was pathetic. It barely stung. Just a weak, half-hearted swing from a guy who clearly thought he was making some grand statement. Derek probably expected that I'd lose it, swing back, scream, start throwing punches. He wanted a scene. Something wild. Something messy. But what he didn't expect was silence. And a smile. I just stood there. Still. Calm. Smiling. Not a happy smile. Not smug. It was the kind of smile that said, "You have no idea what you've just started." Derek's fake confidence faltered for the first time. That cocky, arrogant swagger in his posture? Gone. He looked around, suddenly realizing everyone was watching. Phones were out. People had stopped talking. The laughter had faded into a tense, thick silence. He was on stage now, and I was holding the spotlight. Then I made my move. Not a punch. Not a shove. Just one smooth, practiced motion. My hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Years of training kicked in. I twisted it just enough to unbalance him, my other hand pressing gently against his chest, guiding him back a step. He stumbled into the patio table, knocking over a few bottles with a crash that made half the guests flinch. That's when panic set in. Derek, desperate to save face, lunged at me. But it was all instinct, no control, just wild, sloppy aggression. I didn't even have to try. I stepped aside like I was dancing, and he lost his footing. In one quick movement, I twisted his arm again, pivoted, and brought him down to his knees right there on the lawn. It wasn't violent. It wasn't messy. But it was complete. He gasped, trying to pull away, but I tightened my grip, not enough to break anything, just enough to show him who was in control. "You wanted to prove something?" I said, low and quiet, just for him. "Then go ahead. Show them." He squirmed, tried to fight back. But there was no strength left in him. He whimpered, a guttural broken sound, and slapped at my wrist with his free hand, completely out of his depth. "Say it," I whispered, not letting up. He shook his head, wide-eyed, lips trembling. "Say it." And finally, voice cracked, breath shaking, he muttered, "Please." I held him there just a second longer. Let the silence soak in. Let everyone around us see exactly who this guy really was. Not some confident charmer. Not some bold alpha. Just a coward in over his head. Then, without a word, I released him. He crumpled to the ground, breathless, humiliated, completely undone. And I didn't need to say a damn thing. Because at that point, everyone already knew the truth. The backyard was completely still. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was like time had paused, and the only sound you could hear was Derek's shallow, shaky breathing as he lay there on the ground, trying to piece together what had just happened. He wasn't physically hurt. No blood, no bruises. But the damage, it was done. And it was deeper than anything a punch could have caused. This was the kind of pain that hits your pride, your image, your ego. And it doesn't go away quickly. I stood over him, calm, steady, not even breathing hard. Just watching. Not out of cruelty, but because I wanted him to feel what it meant to lose like that. Not in a fight, but in front of everyone. He slowly pushed himself up onto his elbows, blinking like he'd just been woken from a bad dream. His face twisted with confusion, embarrassment, maybe even shame. But the worst part, no one helped him. Not a single person. Because in that moment, they all saw what I saw. This guy wasn't some confident ladies' man. He wasn't powerful or dangerous. He was a fraud. A man who thought he could mess with someone else's life and walk away clean. And people were recording. I heard the quiet hum of a phone capturing video, someone whispering, someone else muttering, "Oh my God!" There was no undoing it. What just happened was going to live far beyond this backyard. I looked around and saw the shift in the crowd. People who had laughed at Derek's jokes earlier now stared at him like he was a stranger. There wasn't awe in their eyes anymore, just pity. And pity, that's the nail in the coffin. That's worse than hate. Derek glanced around, like he was still trying to find a way out, some kind of lifeline. And then it hit him. She wasn't there. Emily. She hadn't come out. She hadn't rushed to his side. She hadn't defended him or even peeked through the door. She left him to deal with the fallout on his own. And I saw the moment it registered in his eyes. He realized he had made a bet, a dangerous one, and he had bet on the wrong person. I took a step closer. My voice was low, level, not angry, just final. "You should leave." He stiffened. "What?" I tilted my head slightly, made eye contact just long enough for the message to land. I said, "You should leave." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. What could he even come back with after that? He had humiliated himself in front of everyone. He had no more cards to play. Slowly, Derek got to his feet. He brushed off his shirt like that would somehow fix things. It didn't. It just made him look even smaller. He didn't meet my eyes again. Didn't meet anyone's. He turned and walked toward the gate. And nobody stopped him. No handshakes. No parting jokes. Just silence. The click of the gate behind him was the only sound. Someone let out a breath they'd been holding. Another guest whispered, "Damn!" The spell had broken. Conversations picked back up in hushed tones. The party was still happening, but everything had changed. And I just stood there, in the middle of it all, not victorious, not smug, just quiet. Because the truth was, I hadn't really won anything that night. But I had finally seen things for what they were. The party carried on, at least on the surface. People talked again, the music slowly crept back into the background, and the drinks kept flowing. But something had shifted. You could feel it in the way people glanced at me when they thought I wasn't looking. In the way their laughter was just a bit more cautious. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been earlier. What I felt now was something else. Something heavier. Like the weight of months, maybe years, of pretending everything was fine had finally cracked wide open. The truth was out, and there was no stuffing it back inside. I didn't go looking for Emily right away. I didn't storm in and demand an explanation. What was the point? I already knew. I'd seen it with my own eyes. And she'd made her choice long before tonight ever happened. Eventually, she came outside. Her face was pale. Her eyes darted nervously through the yard as if searching for someone who might still be on her side. But no one stepped forward. The people who had once smiled at her, laughed with her, clinked glasses, they just watched in silence now, unsure of what to say or how to act. She didn't say anything to me. She just stood there, a few feet away, like a stranger. And maybe that's what she really was now. We had built a life together. A home. A history. But all it took was one night, one truth dragged into the light, to make it all feel like it had been built on sand. And deep down, I think she knew that too. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to yell or cry or break anything. The moment had already delivered what it needed to. Not with violence. Not with drama. But with clarity. I stood there and looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel confusion or pain. I just felt done. Like a man who had finally seen enough. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, and then closed it again. Whatever excuse or apology she'd been rehearsing clearly wasn't going to hold up here. I turned and walked away. Not in anger. In peace. Because when someone shows you who they really are, and you finally believe them, the hardest part isn't leaving. It's knowing you stayed so long pretending not to see. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.